As simple as this concept is, both grant and revoke have a number of syntax elements that can have really interesting applications. The Redshift documentation goes really deep into these commands, into items such as a cascading effect and what the references keyword means. Also, granting grant itself, and the ability to control who can grant what and to who. Go to the documentation or download the developer guide and get a deeper understanding of how all of that works. Now, there is one area that's, even though kind of deep, I would like to briefly cover, and that's the concept of ownership within Redshift. A super user can grant a simple user the ability to create objects themselves, like tables or views. And if granted at the schema level, this then allows the user to create any new object within that schema. If granted at the database level, this allows the user to create a schema itself. When a user creates an object, they automatically have all rights available on that object that they created. They are the owner of that object and can really do anything to that object that is permitted by the syntax. Rights cannot be revoked from an object owner. However, ownership itself can be transferred if needed. Now, this can all get very complex very quickly. Needless to say, it should be done methodically, be very well documented, and undergo a regular audit process for users who might have more rights than they actually need. We'll actually look at this process in our last module a little bit deeper. Now, schema, like groups and users, is a great way to organize objects such as tables and views and functions into organizational units. Right now, all of our tables and objects exist within the default schema. Now, you might want to create a schema in order to physically separate objects, just like you would with groups and users. For example, we may have some data in our data warehouse that is considered highly sensitive, maybe something like billing accounts and the accounting details related to those. Suppose, as a rule, we create a new schema on the data warehouse called secure for any objects that need to be treated differently and placed separately from all the other tables and objects. This becomes as easy as this. Create schema and then give it a name, secure. Now, to create an object in this new schema, we just have to declare the schema name as part of the object creation, such as this. Create table, we'll call it secure.accountNum, and this can have an account key, an account number, an account location, and maybe a payout code that dictates how often this account is paid to. Then we'll create table secure account holder that links to that account key, has an account name, an account contact, and so now we have two tables in this schema. This schema now being insulated from those other areas. And we can grant access to this schema now with just this kind of syntax here. Grant usage on schema secure to finance. The finance group now has access to this schema, but as of yet, they still have zero rights on any objects within the schema. If I wanted to grant rights to a table within that schema, I would have to do that on a table-by-table basis. Now, I can grant select to all with this keyword and do all the tables within the schema. And this will work, but keep in mind if someone comes along and creates yet another table, that doesn't automatically get pulled into those rights. For this, we would have to change the default behavior of the schema itself. At the schema level, we can change those default behaviors with this alter syntax here. What we would do is we would say alter default privileges in schema, and then name the schema, and then say grant select on tables to group, and then name the group. With this change of default behavior, now anytime a new table is created in this schema, the members of this group automatically get select privileges. Now, other objects give you further flexibility with regards to security. For example, if you have a couple tables that have a few columns that finance needs access to, but you don't want to grant the full select to the finance group because maybe there's other columns that has data you don't want them to have access to, well, you could use a view. We'll do that as create view as then a simple select statement. Now we grant select on the view to the finance group. Users who are members of the finance group can now select from this view and get access to all of these columns, but access to the underlying table is still unavailable. And like many of our prior topics, honestly, the full scope of grant, revoke, even schemas and users and groups would definitely require a full course of its own. but I wanted to just give you a taste of it and mostly show that it is very similar to any other ANSI SQL engine. So dig into the documentation online, hit the forums like Stack Overflow for specific questions, and you'll be on your way in no time.